Hey everyone! We are in the midst of reading the Celebration of Discipline. There it is. Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. And every week we're looking at a different spiritual discipline. And my prayer for you as you've been walking through this journey is that you've been really putting yourself in the place to grow in God's grace, so that you've learned to dig beyond the surface of yourselves and into the depths of God's truth. Truth about you and the truth about me is that God wants us to live fruit-bearing lives. And so we do this by practicing the disciplines. And my prayer is that you've seen just little ways that as you've dug into the practice of these disciplines, that you've just been able to experience God's grace all around you. And remember, it's a practice. It's a practice. So nobody's expecting you to be able to pray easily right off the bat, to be able to practice simplicity right off the bat, to study right off the bat. That's not the objective. The objective is to take small steps towards these practices. And so today I want to talk just briefly about the discipline of solitude. And remember, the beautiful thing about solitude is that in solitude, our Maker becomes closer and our mission becomes clearer. In solitude, our Maker becomes closer and our mission becomes clearer. And that's the beautiful thing about solitude, that when we separate ourselves and when we get away a little bit from just the demands of life, and we take moments to practice what Foster calls at the end of the chapter tiny solitudes, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, 2 minutes a day, and you just take that time. Your Maker, God, who He is, becomes so much more closer to you, and your mission becomes so much clearer. And so I want to read to you from page 96, the first page of this chapter. Chapter 7, Discipline of Solitude, page 96. The last paragraph in this chapter. The last paragraph in this chapter, it says, solitude is more a state of mind and heart than it is a place. There is a solitude of the heart that can be maintained at all times. Crowds, or lack of them, have little to do with this inward attentiveness. It is quite possible to be a desert hermit and never experience solitude. But if we possess inner solitude, we do not fear being alone, for we know that we are not alone. Neither do we fear being with others, for they do not control us. In the midst of noise and confusion, we are settled into a deep inner silence. Whether alone or among people, we always carry with us a portable sanctuary of the heart. And I just love this setup that Foster gives for the discipline of solitude, what it is and what it feels like to feel that sense of solitude, to feel that, it's not necessarily a place. It's not a room you go to in your house. It's not necessarily, a chair you sit in, though you can experience solitude in those spaces and places, but it's something that goes around with you everywhere you go. And something that I said yesterday during the sermon is that, when Jesus invited the disciples after they had been sent out on that mission trip, when they come back, He says, come away with me. Come away with me. And I think something that needs to be very clear to us when we practice the discipline of solitude is it's not about loneliness. Solitude is not about loneliness. It's about an inner state of satisfaction, of knowing that we are never alone, knowing that God is always by our side, that He's always whispering to us, speaking to us, that He's always, even if He's not whispering, even if He's not speaking, He is an ever-present friend, an ever-present God. And I love this imagery of whether alone or with people. On the top of page 97, we always carry with us a portable sanctuary of the heart. That inside of us, the presence of God goes with us. And whether we're silent or we're in a crowd of people, there's something about the inner state of our being that is silent, that is not chaotic, that is not easily anxious, that is not easily angered, but there's something inside of us, and it's the very real presence of God that knows that we're not alone, and that knows that no matter what, He's with us, and his presence goes before us. And so at the end of this page, page 97, Foster quotes from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a man who spent many years in prison. He was exiled into prison. And he writes a book called Life Together, which I haven't read yet, but this little paragraph here makes me want to read this book. And he talks about here how in the last paragraph on this page, Dietrich Bonhoeffer in Life Together titled one of his chapters, The Day Together, and the following chapter, The Day Alone. Both are essential for spiritual success. He writes, "Let him who cannot be alone beware of community. Let him who is not in community beware of being alone. Each by itself has profound pitfalls and perils. One who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into the void of words and feelings, and one who seeks solitude without fellowship perishes in the abyss of vanity, self-infatuation, and despair." And I love this balance that has to happen. There's time for fellowship and friendship, for sharing, for talking, for being in community with people, but there's equally a time for solitude and silence, for getting alone. And I think if we can strike that balance, then we'll be able to live this life of carrying that portable sanctuary of the heart everywhere that we go. And so I want to encourage you, find those tiny solitudes as you walk through this week, and maybe even take some time at the end of the chapter. He talks about, really being intentional about scheduling those longer periods of silence, those longer periods of solitude, where your maker can become closer and your mission can become clearer. I love you guys, and enjoy those tiny solitudes as you walk through this week.